Today I have with me Dr. George Ackerman, who reached out because you had lost your mom, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And because of the fact that I originally started out with talking about really pregnancy loss, miscarriages, and stillbirths and infant and child death, it sort of morphed into a loss in general of any sort of death and the grief that we feel. And then being able to not only survive afterwards, but thrive afterwards. So I'm really grateful that you wanted to talk about your mom, and share your story and tell us a little bit more about what happened. So I'm going to hand it over to you and just have you kind of start at the beginning.
Sure. No, I really appreciate your time. It's an honor to meet you. And I always say this is not about just a talk or a podcast. It's really a conversation that needs to continue for a long time
Hmm.
till we find a cure. And again, I want to thank your listeners too, because it means the world to me and my family. Just even a small opportunity to talk. Unfortunately, my mother passed on 1/1/2020 due to Parkinson's disease, and she
Wow.
had late onset dementia. She was my best friend, and ironically, right before our call today or our talk, I had just finished proofing my chapter one. I wrote my book, so it's going to be the journey of me as a caregiver and then as an advocate. But I really just want to do it to remember my mother, and we
Hmm.
started TogetherForSharon.com in memory of my mother.
Hmm.
And what is completely free. Like we don't, I don't. This is like an odd thing you might have heard. Maybe you have a lot of guests, but my only goal today is that everyone out there knows they're never alone, and that there's people like me out there fighting for them. But we do not accept money. We don't accept donations. We actually on the website there's links to donate to other organizations like the Michael J. Fox Foundation, but in
Hmm.
my mother's memory. So it's a beautiful thing. But again, it's a very important message because people are shocked for some reason when they hear that.
Yeah.
My mother, unfortunately, Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurodegenerative disease, not just in the US, but in the world. We started again together for Sharon.com, again to remember my mother, but really to allow resources for caregivers and those diagnosed, one place to have everything, because I felt that I didn't have that.
Hmm.
And that was really it. So I thought, I put it up and that would be the end of it. So for a year or two, it kind of was just there. And I had my life I had to deal with, and I have my family. I have three children. But then last year, I discovered an organization that was worldwide, and I found out that there's 1 million people approximately in the U.S. with Parkinson, but there's 10 million throughout the world. And I
Wow.
decided a year ago that it's not just about me and my mother anymore; it's about everyone. So I had the honor to interview about 600 people around the world, from Africa to India to, I mean, you name it, from Iceland to
Hmm.
Australia, and I was just number one, I was shocked because it's affecting anyone. It's not like a discriminatory disease. And then number two, every morning I wake up and if you go to the website and click interviews, again, it's all free for them to put the interview. It's a lot of work for me, but it's all
I'm
free.
sure.
And so every morning I wake up, I get just re-inspired by seeing other people's stories and journeys. And that's really, again, what got me into this and where I'm at today.
Hmm. So take me back to the beginning of when your mom was diagnosed. Was it something where she was living on her own and then over time she lived with you?
Yeah, my mother, I found out later, had it for about 15 years. I didn't really even know what Parkinson's was or understand it or even know I needed to until the last 4 years of her life. And
Okay.
the problem with Parkinson's and why there is no cure as of today is because everyone's symptoms are so different. Yes, you might have a majority of similar thing, but what happened on my journey and my mother is completely different than, let's say, Mr. Michael J. Fox might
Hmm.
have. He has external tremors. My mother had more internal. The normal, I don't know if I say the word normal, but my mother showed signs of stiffness in her left arm, and she had trouble towards the end using her ability to function, move. But before that, she didn't show. She's very strong, independent, lived alone. She didn't really want to burden us with her problems, but I wish she did, because now I'm learning a lot more, advances today. Like if you do, not you, but if people do 45 minutes of exercise, it could slow the progression. Unfortunately, we weren't aware of that. I don't know if it would have helped again, because
Right.
it just really, when I found out the fourth year towards her passing, it was just accelerated so quickly. And even today, we don't understand why. Also, she had something called dystonia, which is like the curling of the toes.
Hmm.
She had a lot of pain from fibromyalgia, but she had no real medical condition. But that towards the end, she also got late onset dementia. And the problem with that is it also adds hallucinations and delusions, whereas as a caregiver, that's even more frightening. There were
Right.
some days that she thought that she was seeing, dead animals and pets that she loved, and she would giggle and we would laugh. But then the other times were dark, where we had to remove her phone from her room because she thought she was in fear someone was going to harm her, like
Mm,
a caregiver. And then she called the police, and I had to, be careful of that because obviously I'm in law enforcement, but I was worried about her own safety.
right.
So I installed video cameras in the house. I wanted to make sure no matter what, we didn't have to put her in a home because she asked me not to, and also that she was always safe because, I trusted her and believed her. So when she said she's getting harmed, I actually believed it. And
Right.
thankfully, because I was able to determine that. But then finally, Parkinson's also brings the loss of ability to, control your own physical, motor senses. So it's a brain issue, but also affects, the health. So physical, mental, everything. And
Hmm.
on top of that, I always joke and say, or not joke, but I say, if we could coin a phrase, I felt like I had secondary Parkinson's because
Mm,
obviously I didn't have the symptoms, but I felt everything. I was hand in hand with her, and it was just, tragic seeing your loved one, anyone go
right.
through that. And I felt helpless because we tried everything. Like the kind of person that plans, even for our talk tonight, I had it down. I double checked. I made sure I was ready, dressed up nice, even though we're not. And so
Well,
I
I
did the same
appreciate
thing.
that.
I do the same thing, my mother, but we tried everything, like 7 to 10 doctors, medical marijuana licenses. It didn't really help her. Therapy, this therapy, that. I mean, when I'm looking back, there's nothing else I could have changed
Hmm.
or done differently. But those are some of the main areas, but also freezing of the gate. And also with the medicines, it destroys her stomach. So she had so many issues with her stomach and not even able to. I talk about everything like constipation and things. I think if you don't talk about these tough topics, you're never going to solve them. But we had to hire almost like a staff, which normal people can't. It's not reasonable. And we were spending about $12,000 a month
Wow.
for people who weren't really trained with Parkinson's themselves. But I was hoping, God forbid, she falls. That would have been the end of everything. So
Right.
it's tough.
I want to go back to something that you had said at the beginning, because I think that is the whole idea of why I started this podcast in the first place, and that you just want people not to feel alone. And I think that that is really such an important topic to think about. Like you said, talk about the hard stuff. Talk about the fact that there was all this constipation and all of this fear of falling and everything that goes with it, because somebody else is experiencing that and somebody else is going through it and they also think they're alone. So tell me more in terms of your care for her. Do you have I don't know if you have a wife who helped. I know you said you hired somebody, but do you have other family that was around to give you any sort of respite when you were caring for your mom?
Yeah, I love the name of your show and all that you do and represent because before I became a caregiver for my mother, my other career, and I still, care deeply about it, was to advocate for individuals, specifically in West Palm Beach, Florida, African American mothers who lost their loved ones due to murder. And
Wow.
my entire dissertation, which I don't expect anyone out there to read, was literally about grief and how family members of victims of crime grieve, but how do we reintegrate themselves back into society? Because then we lose that they're almost, become victims themselves of the criminal justice system.
Right.
So my career again was I was in law, then I became a police officer, then did my PhD, and I teach now around the country. But so I kind of correlate the Parkinson's community, sadly, because in my opinion they're in a way victims also, and the
Mm.
caregivers, because they're really forgotten by our government and society. And hopefully we'll have time later, but they just passed for the first time in U.S. history. So while you're recording today, we're going through history right now. The
Wow.
national plan to end Parkinson's, the first bill in United States history, again sponsored and pushed by the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and I was honored to be a part of it. Passed the House in December, so it's a great holiday gift. Now, right now, even you, I actually already have our senators, Florida, Rick Scott and Rubio are already signed on,
That's
and
amazing.
they're supporting it. So all of your viewers and you can reach out, please, to your senators and tell them you like them or hope that they'll support the national plan to end Parkinson. because that's going to just change the world for those diagnosed, medicines, for awareness, for finding a cure. But again, I'm hoping it's like a boilerplate. So if it's passed in the US, other countries can also adopt it in their country.
Right.
But to get back to your question, I'm very lucky that my wife has been inspiration to me. We have 3 children, but she is they say the rock keeps me going.
Right.
Even days I speak about my mother now, I'm fine, and then I'll go in the office next door, and sometimes I'll just fall apart, even though I'm 200 pounds, 6'2" in law enforcement. It's it's hard because
Grief
it's
affects
something that.
everyone.
So, but yeah, my mother and my wife, they were best friends too, which was, I hear funny stories that families get married and they all can't stand the mother-in-law and the daughter, but we never had that. They were, again, I write about it in the book, and it's things that I can't tell you about the book because that's not out yet, but
Right.
that's one of the chapters is when we all met at this funny, like old Chinese restaurant. We had artwork, it was kind of condemned, but we loved the food. And I remember that was the first literal date where I brought my mother to meet my wife, and I didn't. They all just smiled, hugged, and that was history. And she's been. We actually started our own podcast more just for Parkinson's. It's called the TogetherForSharon podcast, and it's my wife and I, and we interview people who have Parkinson's or people advocating. But it's really amazing because you have the female perspective and the male. And what
Right.
I'm learning is, I've just recently spoke at a summit, and I didn't even know that it's shocking that I'm a male caregiver. So that's another thing that opened my eyes in this new journey of advocacy, that there's not a lot of men out there, sadly, standing up. But
Nope.
yeah, so just to answer your question again, is my wife has been the support that I needed. Unfortunately, we have a smaller family, and no one I was really the one. If I didn't step up, she wouldn't have even made it, maybe as long as she had.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I mean, that's a true testament to you and your wife to be able to, for you to care for her and then for your wife to be able to care for you. That's really powerful.
And that's the thing, we don't really have much time to talk about me as a caregiver and all the grief I went through, because I, want to get the word out about Parkinson's and the bill. And we're actually flying to New York City to be in it's the 30th year, but our first time, April 27th, to the New York City Central Park Unity Walk. It's done by the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And I don't usually fly much because it's tough with work, but I just want to be a part of it. And we'll be walking, my mother's memory. So,
That's amazing. But I think that I actually disagree with you because I think that your role as a caregiver is equally as important as remembering your mom because
mm,
you're the one who is number one still here and you're the one who is carrying on her legacy and her memory. So your role is just as important as her role. And
no,
I
you're
think that's a great segue to my next question because in terms of the caring part, once she did pass, that's not only is that a loss for you in terms of your mother and your best friend, but now it's also this loss of every day your world is literally revolving around taking care of her. Take me through that and what happened after she was then gone.
Yeah, I think it's still now. I'm still in shock. So even though it's been 4 years, there's days where, my mother loved being with her 3 grandchildren in the back,
Mm,
blowing bubbles. And every time I walk by the back now and don't see them doing that, it's, heartbreaking.
yeah,
I feel that she didn't just lose 15 years of her life. She lost, even more, because we don't know how long she really had it.
right.
We didn't know much about Parkinson's. Even today, we're just still learning. But, I feel like since she passed, a part of me passed with her.
Mm.
The only way I'm able to keep moving on is doing things like this, talking to you. It's kind of, I guess you think like therapy, even though it's not, but, and also
I
the
mean, it's
people I
definitely
meet.
cathartic.
Well, the people I meet, like you included, they don't become just a talk show host or any. You become family because it's just such a deep, intimate type topic, and it's one that's not going to go away in my heart until we find a cure. Because as we speak, this, millions of people suffering right now can't afford the medicines. They, can't stop. I had one incredible individual named Dan O'Brien. He was a famous guitar player with Santana and some legends, but he had to stop playing guitar because of Parkinson. And I interviewed him on a podcast, and he had DBS surgery where the deep brains, they actually go into the brain.
Mm.
He pressed the button and he couldn't stop shaking. He pressed the button again, he stopped. Those are
Wow.
the people how do you, have a life and enjoy just the little things, obviously others have other issues, and I have major spine, back problems, major surgeries, but I still could sit here and talk at least and keep going. But again, those individuals who are still fighting, it breaks my heart until we can find a cure. And that's why I do speaking to you and have over, a lot of 50 of these, and daily when I should be in the gym myself and trying to concentrate on myself. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm very honest. I'm gaining some weight, and I don't sleep a lot. There's some nights I don't sleep. I post a lot online
Hmm.
because it's, again, it's like dealing with my grief, but I don't think I'll ever be the same. I try to maybe hide it and things, but this helps me a lot. And, publishing a book about our journey, I'm not looking for even money. I don't care about that. I just wanted my mother to be remembered.
Hmm.
And then we're actually publishing the 600 interviews of the other individuals around the world in a 4-book series, which all the stuff is costing me like thousands, of probably
Right.
30, $40,000 that I'm not expecting a penny back. I just want it to be out there in the world. I was shocked when I researched, and I didn't see one book from a son who lost their mother due to Parkinson, not even one.
Wow.
So it's kind of like exciting, but then again, sad.
Right.
And then I like to do a kids book because I couldn't understand how to tell my children about what their grandmother was going through. And then the final one I might do, which might take 10 years because it's a research based. I want to change the whole world of first responders and specifically law enforcement.
Hmm.
I've taught at the academy, and there's not even a word of Parkinson's disease in any of the standard procedures or any of the training. And I think
Right. So if somebody
along with
like your mom calls the police, they have no idea what to do.
not even that. I heard a horror story that actually I've heard a few now. I haven't done a lot of research yet, but one individual was driving, he got pulled over and he was shaking uncontrollably, and it could have ended bad. Luckily, the officers were polite and they worked with him and understood. But
Hmm.
if, let's say it's 2 a.m. and it's dark, and who knows, the police might think you're intoxicated and driving, drugged, who knows, they could pull
Right.
a gun. It could end horribly. Well, if we could just tell one officer out there, it's not their fault, they just don't have the time, and it wasn't in the procedures. So, as a police officer, a lawyer, and also, academy instructor, I looked and searched and saw nothing at all. So, I hope someday, and actually, a big organization, I don't want to give names, but they said they might help me sponsor a bill possibly in the Senate and the House to change how law enforcement looks at Parkinson's in the future. But these are all things that, yeah, I don't have time. So, I wish maybe one day.
I mean, I feel like when you go through something that is so life-changing like that, number one, it sticks with you. Where you said that you're still recovering, it's always going to be with you. It for sure is. I mean, unfortunately, death is a part of life and it's never spoken about and it's never sort of pushed under the rug in our culture. And it's something where the more we can relate to each other, the more we can talk to each other, the more we can go through our grief and the steps that we're trying to survive afterwards, the easier it will become to just, I guess, accept that it's a part of life as opposed to just denying it and saying it doesn't exist. So I just think it's absolutely beautiful that you're remembering your mom in such a beautiful way and really pushing to help other people in the same condition.
Yeah, and oddly enough, I made a lot of friends who now become family who are also fighting other diseases and Parkinson's. And I met a nice person named Betsy, and her husband, ironically and sadly, passed away due to Alzheimer's the same day as my mother passed away
Wow.
from Parkinson's. And she's older, but she's amazing. We became like family, and we actually have our own little blog. We're on the third one now. It's on the website too under think media and then blogs, but we actually call it Tackling Tough Topics, where we talk about law, like the least she's not a lawyer, but we talk about legal issues like you need a will, you need a power, you need all these things planned.
Hmm.
I was really lucky because my mother did do that. Last week, my father was in the emergency room, now the ICU. He
Wow.
might be okay, but he didn't do any of this, even though I asked him.
Right.
It's you don't want, it's a disaster for you, not just for the loved one.
Right.
Also, things like medical marijuana, death with dignity, people don't want to talk. Well, we're talking about them all, like you said, because they need to be things out there. And then the other note, my goal, talking to you, which I have to say has been, it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying, and it's really important to reach the people who are do not have Parkinson,
Hmm.
and people who are not aware or caregivers of Parkinson's disease, because I personally feel that if we don't reach the whole, world, everybody's involved, that we're gonna be further from a cure. And the nice thing, which is not really nice, is this is a bipartisan thing. There's no, political issue at all, because I don't. They actually passed through the House over 400 representatives. Now there were six that didn't vote for it, and I felt part of me wanted to write to them, but I decided
Be
not to
like,
waste
what's
my
your
time.
problem?
Yeah. The only thing I could think of is they weren't even paying attention, or they just didn't understand it, or they wanted
Right.
money for something else that they wanted to chuck in there and they didn't. But there's no negative to passing a bill like that. You're literally going to save lives, and people, as we speak again, are literally struggling. And the big message I was told to keep conveying is that this is very urgent, this bill.
Hmm. And I think that definitely speaks to, I feel like not only your caregiver side, because if you don't have your mom to care for, your caring goes into then caring for everyone else. And I
Yeah.
can understand why you're not sleeping, and I can understand why you became a police officer and why you're in training, and I mean your whole goal in life is to be able to educate and help other people, and I think that's beautiful. And I think that really, and pardon me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think it probably helps with the grieving process also.
Yeah, I mean, everything you say is accurate, and luckily the viewers can't see how bright red I am, because I've kind of, I worked all day, but I'm so tired and burnt out. But then when I was thinking of you and we're gonna have an incredible talk, I was excited. So that little excitement, though, I'm really trying. Maybe in the future we'll talk again, but really have to. I haven't been able to figure out that middle ground. Like where I do have to start saying no to things, and
Mm,
because I just feel like if we even tonight reach one person out there that now will learn about Parkinson's, then we've changed the world.
right,
And if I say no to a show or a time, or but now my own family's kind of suffering because I don't see them as much. And
right,
again, I used to love the gym, but I don't do that as much. And eating health, all the things that we have to tell everyone you have to do, take care of yourself before you can help your loved one. I'm not really, and that's why I like being honest, because I don't mind telling the truth. So
right,
that's the one thing as an advocate, I'm still trying to learn, when to say no. But again, I just feel like if we could just, reach one more person out there, that there'll be a time someday to slow down, but not ready yet.
right. And I think that lends to any sort of loss, right? Like when I went through a miscarriage, my
Sorry to
viewers
hear.
know this, or my listeners know this, that I really only knew one or two people that had been through a miscarriage before me. And yet the more I talked about it, the more people came out of the woodwork and said, "Oh, I had one too," or "Oh, I knew someone who had one," or "Oh, I know someone who had a stillbirth." And I just feel like the more education we can get around it, the more education we can just get out there to be able to get people together and not feel alone in their grief is the biggest help. So I really just want to thank you for coming on and sharing and being able to really delve into the story a little bit more and educate people on not only Parkinson's, but on your loss and your process of grieving.
And you brought up another important topic is, you need support. I didn't really have it because I didn't know, like you, I didn't know anything about Parkinson's at the
Hmm.
point, the time. I didn't know who to reach out to. So, and now fast forward to today, we're almost into the next month, February now, March, but I do not have Parkinson's, and I'm not a person, unfortunately, caring for someone alive with Parkinson's. So what I did a month ago is went to 10 different support groups, but I didn't say a word because it was just, either it was people with Parkinson's talking, and I don't want to say, like, who am I? And they didn't, I don't want to say my mother passed, and that's not what they were looking for. And then
Hmm.
I didn't want to go to the one with the caretakers because once again, everybody's like me, they were frantic, but they don't want to know, they don't. Someone said yesterday there's a beginning in a life, a middle, and an end. And people, we know it's inevitable, but they don't want to, hear from me, who's already been to the inevitable part with my mother. So what I did is I was lucky enough to have a group called PSP Awareness. They're in Canada, a big organization, and they reached out and said we'd like to do something together. So I started thinking, what do we need? Oh, I want to have a group, to speak to people also.
Hmm.
And we started last month. It's going to take time to get people, but the amazing thing is it's completely free. It's confidential and private. It's not recorded. If you go to TogetherForSharon.com, I think click about us and then support group. So we started the first support group I've seen for anyone who's lost a loved one due to any disease. And
Wow.
my goal is it doesn't get too big, but I don't want it too small. but it's really just a place where we can talk to each other about grief. And last month it was hard because there weren't as many people I thought. It's funny, I reach the world, but I don't. It's hard to get people to speak like that, the
Right.
support. So, if any of your viewers interested or lost somebody, again, it's free. There's no catch. If you don't like it, you don't have to coming in, but just check it out, and I'll be there. So it's something important to me, and we're going to keep trying it. Hopefully, we'll get a little crowd. We don't really want more than 5, 10 people, because then it gets you can't have a support group like that. But I wish I had something like that
Right.
then and today.
Right. It's not necessarily a grief counselor you're looking for. You're looking for other people who've
Uh,
been in similar situations.
And I don't really know any. I mean, I guess I've interviewed a lot of people, but I don't have any real close friends that have cared for someone with Parkinson's, and then they pass. A lot of
Hmm.
the, we started a podcast too. I don't, we have almost having our own channel, which I don't know how it's getting to be that, but once a month, we started a podcast, and I think it's incredible. Again, I did a lot of research. I didn't see anything like this. So I decided, why don't we have a podcast with people who have been diagnosed with Parkinson's and a caregiver, me. So we actually all joined. It's three of my close friends now. They become family. Mark, Esther, and Melissa, they're all young onset Parkinson's. So they had it at 30, 40, and those
Wow.
that age. And like Michael J. Fox had it at 30. And they discuss, what their issues with Parkinson's. And I talk about the caregiver side of my mother. And it's just like a magic. And sometimes we feel like we have to stop because we just can talk and we don't have a script. It's called unscripted, and it's also under TogetherForSharon.com. If you click podcast, you'll see I have that podcast with them, the one with my wife, and I started one on my own called Q&A with Sharon's son George, where I really had the honor. I've interviewed some United States congresswoman. Going to be interviewing our Secretary of Health, the Department of State of Florida, who's in charge of elderly affairs, because I don't know anything to this day about how Florida, handles and helps those diagnosed with Parkinson's, because
Hmm.
they didn't really do much for our family. So
Right.
really curious. So anyway, that's like more of us one on one. But I'm just trying to, explore things, and eventually again I'm just gonna have to say stop and just stay with what I'm doing.
I was
But I
gonna say
love
I can see why you don't sleep.
and but to me this is very important, and it's not going away. Even before we got on this, did a quick video and saying I'm tired. I've been working since 6 a.m. and I'm ready to just lay on the floor someday. I feel like a truck rolled over me, but Parkinson's disease doesn't take a break, so I don't feel I should. So,
Right.
then we jumped on, and I'm excited. This kind of talk. I can blame you and your audience because I'm enjoying it so much that I need to, get back out there.
Well, I so appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing more about your mom and about the disease and about your grief and really what is carrying you through on the other side. And I will definitely be checking out the website. You said togetherforsharon.com.
Yeah, and
Perfect.
remember, there's no catch. We're not selling anything. We don't
Right.
want anything except, I don't know if you mind.
Awareness.
I have a little statement I always say.
Go for it.
Uh, uh, this is really, again, the whole entire concept, in my opinion, of Together for Sharon in memory of my mother. But we love you. We support you and your audience. We care a lot about you, and you're never alone. I will advocate for you, and together our voices are so much stronger. And I always kind of joke in a way and say I'm just getting started, because even though I've been doing it a little time, every day I meet someone like you, your audience, and those individuals out there still fighting, and those caregivers who feel alone. It kind of again rejuvenates me to get going and to get back out there. One little area I'm trying to think of a way, which I haven't been too much luck with the fundraising. We've raised over $15,000, but 13 has been from our own family, and we donate to the American Parkinson's Disease Association. We also have a table and we hand out free bands. I don't have it here, but just as a memory of Sharon for Parkinson's awareness. But we walk for the I'll be at an event next month in actually at the Diplomat. It's in Hollywood, Florida,
Okay.
for the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and I'm going to be at a walk coming up for in Boca Raton, Florida, which everyone's welcome to. And then another walk for Parkinson's Foundation. So April's Parkinson's Awareness Month, so that's
Okay.
like the big month. Usually I don't do a lot out of the house. And then also we have the Boca Raton Ballet, the beautiful night where they have an hour where people with Parkinson's dance with ballerinas. And They put a beautiful show. I'll probably put it on my street like
That's
live.
amazing.
Yeah. All those things are just life changing to me, and I just want everyone to be aware because it's a lot of people just don't know that these things are out there and that people do love them, support them, and that we're going to keep fighting till we have a cure.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I think that's a perfect way to end because I also just want people to be aware. I just want the awareness of the fact that you're not alone and the fact that everybody has a story and everybody has a trauma that they come to the table with, and we can all be there for each other.
I always say also, the only journey that breaks my heart is the one that I'm not aware of.
That's a good point. I like
I don't know
that.
how to follow. I can't follow that up. That's that's
Well, I thank you. I have no
thank you.
words,
No, I
but
really
thank you
appreciate
so
your
much.
I really appreciate your time and your what you're doing and all your audience. Please contact your senators because this is not again about me or unfortunately my mother's memory, but it's about everyone out there still fighting, and that's all we can do is keep pushing, keep fighting, and add me on social media and you too, so we could keep this conversation going.
Definitely, definitely. And we'll have all of the links and everything in the show notes. So thank you so much. I hope that the walks go well, and I can't wait to see more about the ballet. I think that's beautiful.
Thank you, and I really appreciate it too.